In 2024, I almost quit my MBA because of fear. Then my wife shared statistics with me from Inside Higher Ed. 54% leave a college degree because of emotional stress. 43% leave for mental health reasons, which means if you are somebody who has dropped out of college or gone back, that means you're in a very small percentile of people who are able to overcome that goal. After that conversation, I recalibrated from 2024, and now I'm 75% done and on pace to graduate in April of 2026. And in this video, I'm going to share with you my 7 failures from 2025 that taught me more about success than anything else, and that is setting me up for a stronger 2026. And I hope that you can grab some of these insights and power up your 2026. My name is Paul Leon. I have impacted $100 million in revenue, and I like making content like this to give you the same results. If you value content on powering up consultative selling skills and a stronger psychologically safe place to work, hit the like and subscribe button. The first failure that I want to get into is underestimating my potential. So the reason I was really afraid to finish my MBA and I wanted to start quitting or doing that is simply just completely out of fear. I think the thing that a lot of people and these gurus online will sometimes talk about when it comes to what books to read and what not, and they'll discount a degree. Let me tell you something, a quote from Woodrow Wilson. I not only use all the brains I have, but all that I can borrow. The value of a degree is not only do you get to leverage the knowledge of people who've walked before you, but you actually have something to show for it. I am all for alternative education after you get real education. There's a joke by Jim Gaffigan I like where he says, laughter is the best medicine after you have real medicine. And that's my alternative example as to anybody that tells you that a degree is not worth something. 1, probably hasn't done it. 2, doesn't understand the value of it. There's a TED Talk recently that I had just watched in my MBA program that says the lifetime of having a degree can be the difference of $1 million. If that doesn't convince you from a data standpoint, I don't know what else will. A long time ago, I had an English degree, an English teacher who said that you're too stupid for college, you should drop out. And I made the mistake of listening to that person, and that was a bad mistake. I also think another really good professional development book I'm going to share that a lot of people don't talk about enough, in my opinion, starts with the letter B for business, I for inspiration, B for business, L for love, E for everyone. That's right, you guessed it, the Bible. And in Romans 12:21, it says, do not allow evil to prevail, instead prevail over evil by means of goodness. And what do I mean by that? And why did I bring that up for this first lesson? Here's why. It would be really easy for me to keep hating on that person to this day and wishing X and wishing Y. Instead, I put them in my nightly prayers. In fact, in my opinion, if there's any business book you need, it's really the Bible for 2026. If you want to spend $140 on some professional development gurus, I'm not going to tell you to stop doing that. I'm not telling you not to do that. I'm not telling you it won't help. I just recommend you rotate it with the one that it all stemmed from. Failure 2 is not valuing speed. We're going to get into a bit of some business stuff in here and go in and out of failures. I'm going to try to keep it on the failures right down the line as possible, though, for this podcast. Failure 2, when I say not valuing speed, and this is something I've learned through my MBA program, is we'll take Spotify as an example. Spotify blew up in a time when LimeWire was amazing and music was free and everybody was afraid of all that. And what Spotify did really good was they actually crafted their algorithm to find the music you want quickly. And what they saw was that even though people could get music for free, people started paying for Spotify because it could meet the demand at the right time, which was quicker. That means speed beats free in that particular example. I do this a lot with podcasts. I've done over 100 podcasts now, and I was talking to a good friend of mine. I love this guy. He's smarter than me, way better at tech stuff than anybody else I've ever met. We were talking about a conversation, and I was like, everything I do for this podcast, cost-wise, about $1,000. He goes, that's a lot of money. But dude, like, you gotta see the software. I can edit things in like hours with Riverside. They don't pay me to say that. I just like the tool. Sometimes that's the difference between getting results and not getting results. My friend who I just referenced, who you don't know, is one of the smartest people I ever met. He could take any piece of technology or software and break it apart, reverse engineer it, and put it back together again. And what he's really, really good at is simplifying the messaging so well that you can't not listen to him. Like, he's really inspirational, amazing. But one of the challenges that he shared with me, and I think a lot of people struggle with, is not making investment into right systems and tools that can bring back their time quicker. And I'm guilty of this too. I try to use all this free software when I first started this podcast. I didn't know people were going to want to be on it years later, but I kept delaying the success of the podcast because I was too afraid to get on the other side of the potential I could have had. And if I had just doubled the amount of podcasts I did or leveraged tools sooner, who knows where this could have been. And again, thank you again for being a listener with us. Failure 3 was letting fear dictate my emotional state. There's an acronym for fear, and it's called false evidence appearing real. One of the things that I personally struggle with is being afraid to sometimes reach out to people, because I'll sometimes be typing a LinkedIn message and then I'll pause and I'll actually not send it sometimes. And which is weird to say as a sales trainer, because one of the things that you have to get very, very comfortable is being able to do outbound at an excessive rate so much that you can't do nothing but win. But even me to this day, I still will do that because I start thinking about prospects in the past that used to swear at me. I used to be a manager for a car rental company, and I would used to work the night shift. And I remember people would come in and combine bad words to make new bad words. And I don't know anything about that, but people sometimes do that. Now that I've been through a pretty strong journey, I've learned that I can look at those people who used to swear at me. I had one person take the F word and the N word and combine it to make a new word. I'll let you figure out how that came out. And for a long time, what I realized is I would type these messages and then pause before doing it I was like, oh, I'm letting fear hold me hostage again. And then I would go right back into sending the message. A good frame, if you're ever afraid to do something, is what's the worst thing that will happen to you if you do it? I think you should frame things from that perspective. The other quote that always stayed with me this year was that on the other side of something hard is a better version of you. If you are afraid to launch that first podcast, send that text, LinkedIn message, whatever that may be, just remember that on the other side of whatever you're afraid of is a better version of you. And hopefully that resonates with you, because it helped carry me a lot through times of struggle. The next failure I had was treating money as a loss and not as leverage. This year, for the first time, we took our family to Disney World in Orlando, Florida, where I was originally from. And it was a lot of money. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not a multi-millionaire. I still drive a Subaru Forester where the driver's side window doesn't come down, which makes me look like a psycho when I go through drive-thrus. People think I'm trying to assault them. No, I'm not mad at McDonald's, just don't want to pay to pull down my driver's side window. But we dropped probably a little over $13,000 on this trip to Disney. I try to slow the spend. As I'll say, it's like a statement I say. I think making a budget's important if you want to have more money. And my wife said 2 words to me. She said, core memories. Excuse me? She said, core memories. She said, listen, honey, the kids are never going to be this age again. She told me a story of how, she goes, I still remember when I was a child, my grandma, her grandma, who unfortunately is no longer with us, would touch my arm as a kid, and when she would take me to Disney. And I really want the kids to have those core memories, because those are things that money can't buy. You just can't get things like that. And that's why it's so important we take this trip to Disney. And I was so angry even in telling the story, because it's such a good frame. There's a ton of leadership stuff you study through an MBA program. And what's funny about all the leadership stuff, leadership BS, psycho-cybernetics, none of them can even hold a candle to the best leader I know, and that's my wife. What the best leaders can do is they're able to take logic and emotion and intertwine it in a way to send that message to influence people. And we've been married 10 years. I'm flexing a little bit there because I'm proud of my marriage and I'm proud of the fact that she's my wife, but also that was a really good frame. Core memories. I mean, I got to use that more often myself. in terms of how I train myself. Failure number 5 is holding on to bitterness. For those who may or may not know, I survived a toxic situation where it required over 40 appointments at the therapist. It was so bad. I actually, on the night of a major event, I lost the ability to taste ice cream out of so much anger and fear when this happened. And then it took another 20 therapy appointments just to get back to sane. There's a verse in the Bible, Romans 12:19, that says, "Do not defend yourselves, dearest ones. Instead, step aside from wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I shall give retribution, says the Lord." When I was going through this situation, I would go to confession a lot. Now, for those, spoiler alert, I just want to be very clear. I share my belief system, not because I'm trying to push it upon you. It's just what works for me. I'm just being my authentic self. I'm a Catholic. That's just the belief system I align with as a Christian. And I remember I was going to confession, and I had confessed so many times what I felt was hatred in my heart for the situation, the people who did me wrong. And I remember I went to confession and I was like, "Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. I feel like I hate this situation. I feel like I hate this particular individual who did this to me." And the priest said something to me that I feel stays with me and that I hope it stays with you. He said, "Bless them, help me." He said, "You keep blaming the wrong things in this bad situation." He says, "Everything evil comes from the devil. Everything good comes from God." And if you're a Christian, that'll align with you. If you're atheist, that's fine too. I welcome all beliefs. I don't really hate on anybody. And he said, if you have to say this 100 times over, you're going to need to say it. But anytime you think about somebody who's wronged you or somebody who's hurt you or somebody who's done you dirty, I want you to just say, "Bless them, help me." The thing that I have to remind myself is when I am angry or I think about someone who has wronged me or I want to be a victim, I do just say to myself, "Okay, bless them, help me. Bless them, help me. Bless them, help me. Bless them, help me." When I first got into the world of training or was trying to crack that code, there was a speaker in Canada. He got on stage and he said, "Bitterness is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die." And there's a lot of famous people who've said that. I think about that statement. I think about that moment. I think about all the therapy of this situation. And the mistake I've made from all that is just letting it take up so much of my energy. If you're someone who's going through a psychologically tough situation and maybe you're not out of it, or maybe you're in the thick of it, or you're afraid to go to human resources or whatever that may be, wherever you're at, I want you to think about just saying, "Bless them, help me." To whoever that person who's wronged you, whoever else. Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking, there's a section in there where he says, if ever you really want to grow, pray for someone. It's Norman Vincent Peale's advice. He said, if you're on the train or instead of judging someone, pray for them instead. If you think they have a bad coat or they look homeless, pray for their well-being. I used to sell cell phones in Florida. There'd be days where I would be put in the ghetto, like the ghetto. A lot of night walkers and certain people who did jobs at night. You can use your imagination. I would sell to those people. And then the next day I would end up selling to a richer part of Florida where people drove Mercedes and they were rich cars. Here's the funny thing. My closing rate was always high. One of the things I've learned is not to prejudge people in sales. I think that's one good thing is sales, and I think it's also a lesson, is that you have to get out of the statement of trying to pre-qualify who's there. I hear this a lot in people I work with. I'll get rid of them tire kickers. So I've been doing this a long time. I don't know anybody yet who has been able to find and qualify a buyer just by how they look, what their teeth look. I haven't seen it yet. You'd be surprised how many people used to spend thousands of dollars that look homeless just because they didn't want to wear a suit that day. I think Catholics get this wrong too, is we have to get out of the frame of because we read, because we go to church, because we get an education, we're somehow better than someone else. That's not the point of leveling up. You level up to be a better you. Just for example, you go to therapy. Like I went to therapy because, yeah, I wanted to survive a toxic situation, but the secondary benefit was I got to project a lot of the things that I don't have to give to my wife. I think a lot of men sometimes will stay away from therapy because there's this thing that it makes you weak or it makes you not strong. And I think that's the biggest garbage. I guarantee you this. If I had can go back in time when I was a top salesperson for years, I would have made more money if I was in therapy. I would have had higher closing rates because I was working sometimes 80-hour weeks that were super intense. If I was in therapy, I was able to project a lot of those days where customers would call me names or whatnot to a professional, I'd be in a much better place then. That's just something from the heart that hopefully you can save yourself a lot of pain from. Failure 6 is saying yes to too many ideas. There's a really popular speech going on right now with Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon. It's on LinkedIn. It's going viral. I mean, anything that guy does goes viral, especially when you have 70% of buying on the internet. He says in his speech in this viral clip that he's getting mentored by someone who's in the manufacturing business. And he says, Jeff, you have so many ideas to destroy Amazon. And he chuckles and he laughs. He makes some good points, though, in this speech, in that the fact that I have a ton of ideas. If you look at my Google Drive sheet, I have ideas for days. I had the opportunity to report for a while to this really awesome professional leader. He had got his MBA and he was actually somebody who struggled with a health condition, but still managed to get it and be super successful. And it's a really inspiring story. And I'll keep his autonomy because I don't have his permission to use it in this podcast. And I remember when I was reporting to him, when we would do like product launches or we would do other things, he would always start with the math. And if there was ever something that had multiple features, a solution, he would put them in order of importance. And I remember I was like, why are you doing that? And he says, because there's so much value, Paul, in this product. There's so much value in it, but people can only prioritize 3 things on the top, and then everything else is just secondary. When we put things in order of importance, it helps us refine our messaging to focus on what solves the most challenges of what's most important to least important to increase the likelihood of how people buy. And I just thought that was such a beautiful frame and it was so strong. Even though I only reported that person, I want to say for 14 months or so. He was one of the best leaders I ever had. He was super encouraging. One-on-ones were smooth. And I just miss that person. Wherever you are, you probably know who I'm talking to. I'm hoping you and your family are well, and I pray for your family every day. So I say yes to too many ideas. And the problem with that is you become scattered. I've never shot a gun, but they call it a shotgun approach instead of a rifle approach. Steve Jobs says, focus is the amount of ideas you say no to. And I think that applies to not just business or managing people. I think that applies to a lot of different things. Sometimes you have to say no to your victim statements so you can find more value statements. This is something I pray for all the time. So my wife and I will pray every night, and our system of prayer is the rosary, and we use the rosary. And the frame I start my petitions with is I call it the F's of focus. So the first F is faith. And again, earlier I said, if you are Catholic, great. If you're, whatever. I don't judge anybody. I try to be, my goal in life is to be the most non-judgmental Catholic ever. I have friends who are atheists. I have friends who are Baptist, Methodist. It doesn't really matter to me. Whatever works for you and helps you level up in your family, just do that. So the first F is faith. The second F is family. So I pray for my faith. I pray to not have conditional thinking, which is something I struggle with, which means I will fall into the trap of saying, well, X must equal Y and I must get this. Or this is something I've had to work through in therapy where I've had these bad beliefs where I've said, because someone has wronged me, they must suffer before I get what I want. And my therapist is like, where did you get that from? And I was like, I don't know. Unfortunately, it was a bad habit I picked up from my mom and my dad growing up. But again, I don't blame my mom and dad. They were great parents. But what happened was, because sometimes what happens, especially with a lot of people in a lot of different faiths, this is the negative part sometimes I feel of of religion is we can put God in this box of where we treat him like a vending machine, or at least I was guilty of that, where if I hit A1, I'm going to get muscle milk chocolate, or if I hit A5, I'm going to get Aquafina water bottle. That's not how God works. In fact, the way it truly works is I'll tell you, this is how I believe it works, at least for me. I remember I was in Florida. I had this mentor. He is probably the best sales trainer I've ever met personally. And I remember I went to his office and I drove to his office in Florida. And I would do this thing where I would say, well, we'll see what God says. You ever met someone like that? I'm that person sometimes where I'm guilty of that. Well, we'll see what God says. It's all in God's plan. It's in God's hands. He was a person of faith too. Wasn't Catholic, but he had his own faith. They worked for him, his family, wonderful family. I pray for them too. And he goes, they're in God's hands, but they're in your hands too, Paul. And he leaned in his chair. He's like, they're in your hands too. Like, he didn't say this, but it kind of felt like, what do you think of that? Get it through your head. But that was an important moment that was authentic for us because we make the excuse of thinking that, yeah, it's in God's hands only. Well, there's a reason it's in your hands too. And sometimes we have to be the one to pick up the hammer. We have to be the one to move forward. We have to be the one to do that. That's something I struggle with is yes, too many ideas. Failure number 7 is confusing the feeling of shame with becoming a better guide in life. So moral shame can correct behavior. Moral shame would be, and I'm going to use some dramatic examples. Been married to my wife over 10 years. Moral shame would be if I kissed another woman and I felt bad and I told her, that would be moral shame. Then I probably would not be married anymore. That's a big example, but I use that to hopefully catch your attention and encourage you, whoever you love, whoever you decide to be with, just make sure that you're honest and loyal to that person. That's an example of moral shame. Toxic shame attacks your worth and identity of who you are. In car rental, I remember people would threaten if they didn't get their fancy car, whatever they thought they were going to get, they threatened to kill me, or I had stuff thrown at me. I remember one time when I was in the cellular world, we didn't have this product from this one person. He called me slurs. You're an ass. You're a piece of shit for not having it. I didn't control the inventory, but sometimes people will do that. And where toxic shame fits into this is if someone insults you or someone says you're not worth much, you accept that answer and make it part of who you are. That's toxic shame. That builds up. It starts to peel away at your confidence. I remember I got denied for insurance and I couldn't figure out why, and I had to contact, and they were, well, you were denied because you're on suicide watch. And I said, well, why? And I said, because when somebody goes through therapy this much, we flag them, and I had to write a letter and everything. And I remember in writing this letter to the insurance company to get approved, because of all the therapy I had to go through, was I had to relive all that events. And I remember writing that to the insurance company, and I just started laughing as I got toward the end, because I lost nights with my kids over this situation. I lost nights where I could have been with my wife fully, but instead my brain was more caught up in what this person used to say to me. I remember I used to get feedback saying, I don't really like your face in meetings. Can you fix your face in meetings? Can you fix your face? How do I fix my face? I know I'm not attractive. Like I know I look like Steve Carell behind prison bars. I look like Adam Sandler on drugs. Like I know, like I'm not God's gift to handsome, but I just think it's hilarious to me because I didn't even know what psychological damage meant till I went through all that therapy and started this MBA program. And my first 4 or 5 classes were dedicated to just that term. The lesson here is God doesn't save us from every consequence in life. We partner with God to change who we are for the better. For 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says, give thanks in all circumstances. I'm not a priest. I'm not a Bible interpreter. I speak only English, a little bit of broken Spanish. I accept that Bible verse for Paul Leon. For Paul Leon is to accept the circumstances and then act within it. And that's tough to hear because it does feel good to be a victim. It does feel good to be miserable and blame everybody else for everything. I get it, but I don't get it anymore these days because I've gotten stronger. And there will be something else that's going to take me away until one day I'm called home. But in the meantime, I just want to give it all in a different order. I used to give it all to my career, but I give it all to my faith and my family. That's for me. Here's what nobody ever tells you. The pain of your current reality will blind you from a future possibility. Isn't that crazy to think about? I missed most of my SMART goals for this podcast. And I was looking at it from an 80,000 foot view. I wanted 50 reviews. I think I'm only trending on 10. I wanted 50. I didn't get it, but that's fine. But I looked at all my goals I set just for this podcast as an example. And I said, what happens if I didn't set these SMART goals? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-based. Where would I be if I didn't set them? Today, I got a text from someone that I trained 2 years ago who wrote, your selling scripts are killer. I wrote, who is this? Like, I didn't even know who it was because I had to get a new phone. I'm still working through all my contacts and organizing my lists. He goes, your selling scripts are still killer. I still use your voicemail script to this day. And this person didn't know. This person didn't know what I went through. They don't know any of the pain I felt, or I had to need 60 therapy sessions I've mentioned several times to survive. But so what? So what I went through all that stuff. I have a beautiful wife, kids, and I count my blessings now more than I used to. Maybe you didn't hit those goals, but let me be real with you. Did you get closer? Did you get to go to more football games with your kids? Did you get to hold your wife's hand or partner's hand more? Give yourself grace. You got to give yourself grace and stop comparing. That's probably one of my biggest failures in life is I would say almost every day I fight a moment of conditional thinking, as I mentioned earlier. But here's the truth. Progress beats perfection every time. Progress beats perfection every time. Not every podcast I do is great, and I'm okay with that. It's where am I going as a result of learning from this journey is what's most important to me. Now I need you to do something for me. Which of these hits you the hardest? I encourage you to drop it in the comments. If you're not comfortable with that, you're welcome to email me or message me right through our website, themanagersmike.com. I know for me, failure 5 about bitterness has wrecked me the most in 2020. That has wrecked me the most. I think the thing we have to remember is real heroes, they don't wear capes, they don't wear masks. The real heroes in society pick up their kids from school. They're the electricians, they're the plumbers, they're the teachers. They're the people that take the kids to karate class at night or hold their wife's hand. Instead of recording something that they should, podcast, paper, whatever, they spend time with their partner and they give time to the people they love. Those are the real heroes. The ones you don't see. The ones who are behind the phone, taking the call that you're upset about. They go to the grocery store, do that Instacart order when they really don't want to. Those are the heroes. You're a hero. And I'm just trying to be as good as you. I remember when I was in the thick of it, and I'm still in the thick of it. I still get calls, I still get rejections, but man, those wins when you get them, don't they feel good? I know mine do.